Nobody's Business, a podcast for all those subjects we've been trained to avoid. Here's your respectfully irreverent host, Keith Shelton.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's edition of It's Nobody's Business. As you know, this is a resurrection of an old radio talk show I used to have called State Your Business way back in the day. Really enjoyed it. Glad I got the opportunity to have a radio talk show. I picked up a pretty loyal following, and we talked a lot on kind of the same subjects we're covering now. Typically, things would be of interest to business owners, news of the day, legal issues, financial issues, employment, education, and so that's what we're doing now. And what we want to do is try to entertain you, enlighten you, inform you, make you laugh from time to time, challenge you on some things, expand your horizons. And so welcome aboard. I want to introduce my sidekick and my co-pilot, JT Shelton, my son.
Hey, thanks for having me back again. I guess you don't really have a choice. I'm kind of the guy who puts a lot of this stuff together.
And making a special appearance tonight is my boss and my producer, Sonar Shelton.
And he didn't have a choice, and he was really desperate having me on.
Is she here to keep us in line tonight?
Yeah, I'm worried tonight. I'm worried this may be y'all's last broadcast. I've seen the lineup. I've seen the subjects, and the trailer's right. These are the subjects we are trained not to talk about, but I see that y'all have not been trained. So here we go.
Well, most people who know me know that I have never played well with others. So
I know you. Yeah.
And I try to be respectfully irreverent whenever I'm irreverent. So let's get it kicked off. JT, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, well, I'm sure you've all seen the headlines today.
You want to start off with
without a doubt, the Trump jury verdict has got a lot of people talking. I was on TikTok right before we hopped on the stream, and just about every live stream I came across was mostly people cheering the the witch hunt and the jury verdict that gave the guilty verdict for 34 counts of Class E felonies for Trump today. But what people weren't realizing, and they were, a lot of people were cheering, they were happy about it. And then what a lot of people didn't realize, and I'm glad that we're here with you to talk about this, is this isn't the end. It's not the final step. It's not just like, okay, Trump got a verdict and now he's done, he's out. We still haven't appealed. He's going to appeal this. And so we could talk very specifically about not only how this is not good for our republic, it's damaging. And every American should really be scared about, I wouldn't say scared, but aware that this has been a live viewing of a political attack on a candidate for the presidency. And so, maybe you could go into a little bit more on the details of what's next and what's to come. Everybody obviously saw the jury verdict, and everybody thinks, okay, well, that's it. Well, is that it? What happens next?
Well, first of all, no, that's not it. He does have appeal rights, or at least those haven't been taken away from him yet. You and I both have full-time jobs, and we're trying to work during the day. But over the last several days, I've at least kept my news feed on in the background, and from what I can gather, I did not have the ability to just study this prosecution case in depth. I did not get to study the trial news as it played out, but I did it as news items would pop up and it would catch my eye. I would say that I am fairly informed about this Trump trial. And what it amounted to was 34 misdemeanor charges under New York law that amazingly, the statute of limitations had run on each one of those. But under New York law, the prosecution tied those misdemeanor alleged acts to what under New York law are felonies. And basically, the prosecution never did put forth in their charge against Trump what the actual felony act or acts were that these misdemeanor acts were in furtherance of or in conspiracy of. And when you look at the jury instructions that the judge gave, when you watch how, one of the elements was election, federal election. And again, remember, this is state court and alleging federal election violations, which, when you go back and look at the history of these charges, the federal Department of Justice looked at these same set of facts and they declined to prosecute. They said there's no case there. The Federal Election Commission, if I believe, was the other agency where charges were brought, and they declined to prosecute. But here, Alvin Bragg, the New York District Attorney, who is a George Soros-funded puppet, said he believed he could put together about 34 rings for Trump to jump through, and he believed he could make him jump through them all by the time he got through telling his story. Well, for a New York jury, if you truly think that a jury in New York City was the true peers of Donald Trump, well, that's a fallacy. The conduct of the trial, the things that the judge would do and would not do, and would allow and would not allow. I mean, it was just instance after instance where it was clear that he basically was leaning on the scales heavily. And I have no hesitancy to say that based on what I have been informed of, if those facts were true. And I believe they were, because they come from rather credible people. Professor Turley among others, Dershowitz, another. But you got to remember that because it had one of the, let's just say out there in the cloud somewhere, the felony was something to do with a federal election. Okay. The judge would not allow the defense to put on a former Federal Election Commission member to testify as an expert as to just what a federal election was and what laws applied and what laws didn't apply. I mean, that's just an example of such biased courtroom management of this trial that I would dare say I don't think Trump would have. In a fair world, I think Trump will easily have these convictions overturned. But the fact is, he's been convicted, and unless somehow they can take away his appeal rights, I believe there were so many reversible errors and conditions imposed during this trial that any one of them would be sufficient to grant Trump a new trial. I think one of the most obvious was, the testimony of a former girlfriend. I mean, there was so much testimony that the judge allowed her to give that had nothing to do with, record keeping, bookkeeping entries, things like that. And then when the defense would try to put on witnesses, well, he would just flat out, he would allow the prosecution to interrupt so many times it wasn't even funny. Now, that particular thing you're showing there, the ICC prosecutor threatens U.S. senators, that's a whole nother subject of just how this world has gone crazy when it comes to using the legal system to obtain nefarious ends. And yeah, that one needs to be talked about as well.
Well, Keith, I wanted to know, I understand that I understand issues with the judge, prosecutors, and all that, but what I'm wondering is, how did that play into the jury? Was it that the jury instructions were written in a way that they felt like that was the only way they could find? I mean, what about the jury?
All right. Obviously, we didn't get to see the jury instructions till they were, made public. But basically, the judge said that I'm paraphrasing, but you don't have to believe he was guilty to find him. Let's see, you don't have to believe he was. Oh shoot, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, it's like a hodgepodge. In other words, he said, if 4 of you believe he did this thing wrong, and you're unanimous, and 4 more find that he did this other thing wrong, and that's what I'm saying, that the underlying felony crime was still left out there in the netherworld. It was never clearly stated. That's why it was, and it didn't matter how many times that the defense filed motions for more definite charging pleadings. They didn't get them. And
he said you didn't have to agree on all the same things he did wrong. If you believe this one did this and this one believed he did that, I don't know how he put it, but that was the crux of it.
But if at the end of the day, even if they thought he did commit 3 different things and they weren't unanimous on the 3 different things,
exactly.
If they did think he was guilty of something, then that was the 12 he needed. So
yeah, I remember that now.
But go ahead, JT.
No, I was just going to clarify. I read a lot of that. These were all misdemeanors, but they were felonies under New York law. Is that right? Is that how you explain that?
No.
How to explain that a little more to me?
They were predicate acts.
Predicate acts meaning what?
Meaning they were acts to, and I wish I had the actual reading. I was reading an article last night about it, where the crime, the actual felony crime, had to do with furtherance of getting yourself elected or keeping somebody else from getting elected. That was supposedly the federal crime. And the way the New York law wrote, that any of these misdemeanor acts, if that's what the end game was, then even though the statute of limitations had run on each of those 34 acts as misdemeanors, if they were, that's why the news was when the verdict came out, Trump's now a convicted felon. Well, he wasn't found guilty of a quote felony. He was convicted of 34 misdemeanors whose statute of limitations had run, but because they were predicate acts to a felony, then he got convicted of a felony 34 times. And it had to do with illegal acts that led to you getting elected, or illegal acts that where you were keeping somebody else from getting elected.
But it seems like that all went toward intention. his intention. I mean, how do we know his intention wasn't he didn't want Melania to know?
Well, that's all part of the commentary that you heard all over the news stations, left leaning and right leaning last night was there's nothing that was heard in evidence in the court where anybody could say that was Trump's intention was to commit that crime. And that's an element of criminal law that's called mens rea, MENSREA. I mean, you've got to have the criminal intent in your mind as an essential element of the crime. And that's where, it didn't matter if you were watching CNN or in some cases MSNBC, Fox, Newsmax. It didn't matter who you were watching. That's what the commentators were saying is they just do not believe that the burden of proof has been met, that they could say that there was evidence put on that was believable where, Trump had the mental intent to commit, those acts. They just didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But let's go back to what you said a while ago. What about a New York impaneled jury? Well, you already know New York's one of the highest tax states in the country. Well, that tells you something. New York City is even worse. So that tells you something. So if you think, a jury of 12 in New York City could be considered a jury of Trump's peers, well, that's laughable. So, how many of them were there? It didn't matter what they heard, as long as, when the judge says, okay, now go deliberate, they already made their minds up. He's got to be found guilty, and that's all that mattered. Well, when you read, the Attorney General for the state of New York, Letitia James, she flat out said when she was running that she was going to do all she could to prosecute Donald Trump, quote, the illegitimate president. Now, that's what she ran her campaign on. Mm. So why would you be surprised that Trump could be found guilty even when everybody who has an IQ greater than 50 could look at the evidence that was put on, even under the biased directives and rulings and edicts of the very liberal judge who himself had a conflict of interest. His daughter makes bukus of money off of this very trial. And that's a well-known fact. And so they file motions to have him recused and have him replaced by a more moderate judge. That didn't go in. He refused to step down. And you got to remember this about when it comes to judges, their judicial canon uses the phrase of must avoid even the appearance of influence or impropriety. So, could I get in his mind and say that because he knows his daughter virulently hates Trump, and she's doing everything she can to see that he is not elected president coming up, can anybody prove that in his mind he's going to rule one way or the other because of that? Well, in a vacuum, no. Before this trial started, before people started bringing motions and responses before him, you'd say, well, no, you couldn't. But when you watch how he responds to motions and what he allows the attorneys to say and what he chastises the attorneys about what they said or didn't say, calling that witness the attorney who used to be the attorney for Cohen, when he was on the stand, the judge just ripped him apart, one side and down the other. When you could watch and be informed of the things that the guy was trying to testify to, and the things that the judge would, he even got on to him for rolling his eyes.
Well, Keith, I thought at one point, I don't watch this like you do, but at one point, we were seeing the uh, lefter leaning news shows were even saying things like that this wasn't going well, that Trump was looking good, that this guy was absolutely crazy. So what happened? What happened? When did the tide turn?
Well, the tide never really turned. What happened was you had a deck stacked against you. I'm living proof of what a stacked legal system looks like. My name is all over the Mississippi Supreme Court. I'm telling you, go read. Just go pull the files, read the evidence, read the facts, and I can tell you when somebody's got it in for you, it's
Yeah, well, we know about
unbelievable hill to cry.
we know about being falsely accused, but I mean, I thought that was a sign of this cannot possibly go their way when they were making the comments they were making about this guy on the stand.
Well, that's what has shocked everybody, and I'm saying you shouldn't have been shocked. The CNN commentators, the MSNBC commentators, the news outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, they were all commenting about the fact that they just don't see where the prosecution has won the day. They just do not see how they put on enough proof to prove that Trump is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They were all saying it. It's because that's the reality. That's why the Department of Justice would not. I don't think people didn't try to get them to. They did. But the Department of Justice says under the law, we just do not see that he's committed a crime. Same thing with the Federal Election Commission. Well, they wouldn't pursue it either.
What about the case in Georgia? I was reading an article. The guy who wrote the article was just saying that Trump had been arrested and indicted on 13 charges with 18 other defendants related to his request to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find more votes and alleged approval of a scheme to substitute the alternate electors to alter the outcome of the 2020 election. Of all the charges facing Trump, this is the most serious. He's actually he's actually downplaying the Georgia case over this one, even though he got a guilty verdict on this one.
Well, when Trump said that, let's go back to the night of the election. If everybody will remember, Trump was leading pretty convincingly. Then all of a sudden, all the ballot counting stopped. And then miraculously, stuff starts getting found underneath tables, boxes of ballots that nobody knew were there. So, yes, all these votes were, quote, found. Well, here's Trump using the word found or find. I don't believe he was the one where all these, ballots miraculously were found in just a few hours, so that when the counting resumed in the morning, all of a sudden Joe Biden had 80 million votes. Mr. I couldn't get out of the basement. Mr. Show up for a rally and he couldn't get 200 people. He couldn't get 20 people to show up at a rally, not let alone 200. Trump and them were turning people away and had to put up, they started having to put up big, huge TV screens outside of arenas. But that case in Georgia turns on the fact that he said, find me more. He didn't mean go create fake ballots like happened for Joe Biden. That's not what he was implying. He's just saying, are we there? Can we go back and recount? That's what he was implying. But they've got him verbatim using the words. But let me tell you something. There's a word that if you've been in this business long enough, it's called projection. Whatever I'm guilty of doing, I'm going to do my best to project it onto you. Okay? It's called projection. And the
Keith,
ones who go
Keith,
ahead.
you and I, back in the day when we had to take every bit of law business that walked in the door, and we did a lot of family law, and we could tell what some in a divorce when somebody was accusing somebody of doing, they had already done that most likely, and we're expert at it. So we've seen that play out for sure.
I remember telling a client that his wife was having an affair and that she either had a boyfriend or she had one who was waiting in the wings for her. And he just said, no, there's no way. There's no way. And based on everything that he was telling me and you at the time, and you were my paralegal, everything he was telling us that she was accusing him of, I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm writing it down, but instead of putting his name by it, I put her name by it. And when we got through, I started telling him, here's what's going on. And within 3 days, he called me back and said, you were right. You were right. She finally admitted she had a boyfriend. And I said, dude, that's why she kept accusing you of having a girlfriend, because she felt guilty about what she was already doing. Well, that's called projection. And when they accuse, go ahead.
It wasn't every time, but it was most of the time. Most of the time.
Well, that's why I say when they're accusing Trump of using the word, find me some ballots. He's not talking about go fake them and pull them out from under a table that's had a dust trouble over it, covering them up. That's not what he was talking about, but that's what that's what they got him charged for. The ones who had actually done it was all these. I mean, how many people do you want to have testimony from that talked about when the power went off and we were told to stop counting. Well, all of a sudden these big, huge boxes started showing up from all over the place, miraculously. So when they stopped counting, Trump's ahead solidly. We start counting again. All of a sudden, all these huge numbers in Biden's favor were there. Almost every state, that's the way it was. And Joe Biden ends up with 80-something million votes. That's what you call projection. So anyway, that's the Georgia case. And then you got Miss Fannie Willis, who she obviously has her own problems with her boyfriend that she hired to join her prosecution team while he was still married. And then that gets her caught up in the middle of his divorce case, and that's been a big mess. She needs to recuse herself. She should have never brought the case to start with, but like the Attorney General in Letitia James in New York, this particular DA ran her campaign on the promise to her voters that she would prosecute Donald Trump. And lo and behold, she's kept her campaign promise. But we can talk the detail, but here's something I need to get to about the Trump trial in New York, and that is this. It's going to be one of the things that the defense is going to be, or if this judge does not allow this, that's just another sign of how biased he is. But in preparation of their appeal, they are going to ask for the right to poll each of the jurors. And what they do is they get to put each juror under oath, and they get to ask them all kinds of questions about how that particular juror came to the conclusion on each of the 34 counts, how they came to the conclusion that Donald Trump had been, how they deemed he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, I knew that they could poll the jury, and because I was on a jury once, and they had everybody stand, and they had to give their verdict, so that they had to, everybody, it was unanimous. They're not guilty. but I guess just as an intimidation factor, I'm not sure, but I didn't know that they could poll the jury and make them give a count as to how they came to that conclusion.
Well, let me say this: it's not wide ranging. Now they can't ask them, about why did your Aunt Mary, marry Uncle Bill. That's not how far they can go. It does have to be specifically about the jury instructions they got, what they understood they were doing. How in their mind did they think they followed the jury instructions to arrive at a guilty verdict? But they are.
And what bearing would that have on the actual verdict if somebody jumped up and said, "Well, I just didn't like that suit he was wearing"? I mean, what would that do?
Believe it or not, that shows a bias that has nothing to do with the function of a jury trying to carry out justice. And so,
of course, it
you use that as an off the cuff example, but yes, that's the kind of stuff you do find out.
Well, exactly. But what bearing, what effect would that have on the decision? Would that make it so it could be retried, or it would be a mistrial, or I mean, how does that?
It means it could result in a mistrial. The jury, in other words, a verdict be thrown out, and then the prosecutor would have to decide whether he wants to impanel a new jury and go through another trial trying the same thing.
Well, I sure didn't know that. I thought all they do was just ask, how they voted. I didn't know that they could do that.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be interesting to find out what the answers are going to be when the defense team gets to ask the jurors, how they took the jury instructions, how they applied the jury instructions, and what they understood the law to be to the facts they heard, that sort of thing. They do get to do that.
Okay.
And they have to get to do that in order to prepare their appeal.
Well, since we're on the topic of attacking our nation's republic, this is more covert ops in my opinion. But how about we take a quick break for a word from our sponsors? We actually have a legit sponsor for this week's episode from Stretch Med here in Lubbock, Texas. We're going to take a quick break and have a quick ad break for you guys. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some real physical attacks and infiltrations in America today. So we'll be right back. A big shout out and thank you to Stretch Med of Lubbock, Texas. I know Keith's a longtime customer and fully supports what they're doing over there. You get over there and visit them. They're a great outfit. They'll get you taken care of.
Well, yeah, I want to make a plug for my guy Mario. I tell you, I'm 68 years old, and I'm 68 years old. I'm still getting.
Did you forget for a second?
No,
What?
I'm
Mario, what are you doing over there to him? You're making him forget.
He's having a little stroke.
No, I'm hearing reverb in my earpiece. But Mario's my guy, and I'm 68 years old, and I can testify that when I started the stretch routine, I go once a week, and it has made all the difference in the world on how I feel. Makes all the difference in the world on my physicality. Now I'm going to tell you, I still spend so many hours of my day in front of a computer screen and being way too sedentary. But the improvement in how I feel, the how much better my back does, my neck, I cannot. You young people, be very thankful for your good health. But as you get older, you need to start thinking in terms of getting into a stretch routine, a stretch regimen. And like I said, my guy's Mario's done a great job, and I sure do appreciate how they've really helped me, and how much being mostly faithful. I do have to miss every now and then, but I tell you, it really has done me a world of good. So I highly recommend it for anybody who's on up in years. Get in touch with them. They're great.
All right. Thanks again, Mario and Stretch Med here in Lubbock, Texas, for the plug. Where do you want to start, man? I mean, do you want to go? There's many ways we can go here. There's physical attacks on our infrastructure, and then there's infiltration on our border. Which way you want to go first?
Well, I wanted to talk about the Middle East right now, just because here, we also do a podcast on spiritual things, and we've been doing a pretty in-depth study of the Old Testament, and the battle that is waged constantly, it has hugely historical significance. And let's just go to the bottom line on some things. You see the protesters, you hear the politicians, you hear the foreign leaders, and we need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. What are we going to do? We need a ceasefire, stop the fighting. Well, I want to remind everybody, October 6th of 2023, there was a ceasefire. Israel did not break the ceasefire. Hamas did. And Hamas did it in the most horrific, unbelievable ways. And it's the fact that they absolutely hate the Jews. Now, think about it. If you were talking about Confucius, if you were talking about Buddha, if you were talking about Mahatma, anybody, any god, any religion other than Judaism or Christianity, people will let you say what you want to say. They'll listen to you. No ire, no fiery retorts. But when it comes to Jews specifically, when it comes to the name of Jesus the Christ specifically, oh my gosh, up in arms. And I just want to say this, and I make no bones about it. I'm a believer. I'm a member of I'm a follower of the way. If you want to know where that phrase comes from, read the book of Acts. And I do believe that the Hebrew Bible and the Greek New Testament are inspired writings from the Holy Spirit. And so when Genesis 3:15, JT, can you there you go. When God declared the seed war on Satan after the fall of man in the Garden of Eden, this is what he said: I will put enmity, obviously you know what enmity is, between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Well, the word for bruise means the Hebrew word there means stomp it, as into mean.
I think it's important to also, for anybody who doesn't know what the word enmity means, the dictionary defines enmity as the state of or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. So, what's your first reaction when you see a snake? Except for you freaks out there that love snakes, what is your first reaction when you see a snake? It's like, I'm getting a shovel or something. I'm gonna kill it. And so,
he is not my friend.
We are naturally and instinctively hostile towards serpents and snakes. Just putting that out there.
Well, that is what the word enmity means. But here's the thing. When Jehovah God declared that seed war between humanity, specifically the bloodline that would lead to the birth of the Messiah, and Satan and his minions, Satan took him seriously. We have not. I can remember having that taught in Sunday school. I remember having preachers teach on it, preach on it, and it's like they fly right by it at 600 miles an hour. But when you stop and you read the words, and when you think in terms of how many times Satan did everything he could to make sure that Messiah was not born, the Pharaoh that declared all babies under 2 years of age would have to be killed. Herod issuing a similar edict after the wise men had visited him. The fact that only 8 people were saved on the ark. There's just time after time where it's clear that Satan was doing everything he could to make sure that Messiah was not going to be born, from the tribe of Judah. And he took that declaration of war between his newest creation, humanity, and specifically the woman and her seed who would be the Messiah, and him. He took it serious, and he's never acted any other way besides that. He hates us. He despises us. He wants as many of us destroyed before we ever come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ as our Savior. That's what he wants. He despises us. So that's why when you see a group of people, whether it's on the news or you're watching a podcast or anything else, if you're talking about Islam, if you're talking about Muhammad, if you're talking about Mahatma Gandhi, just go on and on and on. Everything can stay calm. Everything can stay on an even keel. Everybody, will be respectful to the other side, except when you're talking about jewelry or you're talking about Jesus Christ. And then tempers start flaring. Abortion rights and pro-life people. Pro-life people are obviously predominantly Christian. And you ought to see how some of those, they act like they're going to give each other quarter and listen to the other side. And I'm talking about, I've watched one last night. It wasn't even a minute, and the woman started attacking the pro-life guy. Physically attacking him. And that's that. Where does that come from? It comes from Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15. We are not serving ourselves well when we have an enemy in the form of Satan. And let's lay a few other foundational blocks here. People, Satan is not God's equal and opposite counterpart. Satan is a created being himself. There is one true God, Jehovah. There's none like him. He created all the other entities, the angels and humans. Everything else was created. There's nothing that exists. According to the Bible, there's nothing that exists that wasn't created by him. Satan is a created being. Yes, he and a whole host of angelic beings, supernatural entities that God had created, they're not his equal counterpart. They do have supernatural abilities. If you don't believe it, go back and read the passage about Moses and Aaron in the court of Pharaoh when they started performing some of the miracles that God wanted them to perform. Well, guess what? Pharaoh's sorcerers and magicians, they could match them there when they first started. Where'd that power come from? Well, it came from these dark forces of the angels who rebelled along with Satan. So they exist, but they don't equal God. There's one Jehovah. There is no other. So, having said that, we could serve ourselves better if we would take the Genesis 3:15 seed war as seriously as Satan and his minions have. And then when you start looking at world events, when you start watching somebody, you hear what they're saying and you know they're lying, but they're saying it anyway. Where does all this come from? Evil. Evil is in the world. Where does the evil come from? It's Satan and his minions. So let's go back to Hamas. October 6th, 2023. There was a ceasefire. Hamas broke it. Hamas is now paying the price for their absolute, abject, unapologetic hatred of not the Israelis. I'm sorry, not Israel. They hate Jews and they want to kill us. They don't care about the government. They don't care about the land. They hate Jews. Where does that come from? It comes from the Genesis 3:15 seed war. Okay, that is demonic when you have that kind of behavior that's totally irrational, because they don't act that way to anybody else, only the Jews.
Not just behavior, but that kind of hatred. That kind of hatred. I heard somebody today on the news, and this was one of the major news shows. They had a guest on that said, this is beyond bad people. It's evil. It's evil. There's evil involved here, and the people are being influenced by this evil. That's what we have.
Here's the thing: all the atrocities that that Hamas fighters committed, obviously not all, but the vast majority of them that they committed on October 7th, 2024, they were proud to be committing them. They were so proud. They would video them. They would audio. They would have people's phones on so that their mom and dad back in Gaza could hear the screams of their victims as they were mutilating them, killing them, raping them, burning them. And they've got it recorded where the mom and dad are telling them, "Great job, son, great job. Keep up the good work." Well, folks, that's evil. That's not being merely mistaken. That's evil. And I don't know how many of our listeners and viewers saw the video that has been put together of just the videos that the Hamas fighters that Israel captured from the Hamas fighters, either on their phones or from video caches that they've captured when they invaded Gaza to destroy Hamas. But they have put together a video. I've intentionally not watched it because from what I did get to see, it was bad enough. It was bad enough. But the Israeli military gathered a whole bunch of reporters in one place, and they played those videos for them. And I understand it's about an hour of video that they put together, and people were coming out. The news reporters were coming out of that viewing. Most of them were crying. Most of them were just in shock. They couldn't believe it. But this was video that wasn't created by the Israelis. This was video that was created by the Hamas fighters, and that was their reaction. Is all the credibility, all the benefit of the doubt that they had appeared to try to give Hamas before then. I mean, just reading the testimonies of those news people who came out of that viewing room was enough for me to know I didn't really care to ever see the actual video. So,
well, and right now you see a lot of young people protesting across university, across the country in favor of free Palestine, and they're all calling for a ceasefire. And you look back at the
well, that's exactly why I started off with what I said. There already was a ceasefire.
Yeah, there chronologically, there has been ceasefires over the years, and every single one of them has been broken by Palestine or Hamas or ISIS or whoever is the
Hezbollah,
the group that's keeps popping up, these different resurgent groups. So you can go protest a ceasefire all you want. Every single one of them, every time a deal has been brokered to have a ceasefire, has been broken by Palestine. So you try to, if you even try to engage in anything that's not pro-Palestine with these people, it gets crazy. It's evil in itself.
That's exactly right. When you see it, I really want to encourage everybody. Go open your Bible, underline or highlight Genesis 3:15, and the next time you watch the news, and you're watching Joe Biden lie his fool head off, whenever you see his press secretary lying her fool head off, just put Genesis 3:15 up there again. And when you're watching these protests and the news people who try to give these people the benefit of the doubt and give them a chance to say, why are you protesting? What are you trying to accomplish? And it's all about hatred. Here's a simple fact. If Hamas right now would stop firing rockets, if Hezbollah in the north would stop firing rockets, lay down their weapons, and say, we will fight no more, guess what? It's over. That's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. It's never going to happen because the hatred, Golda Meir, who used to be, I believe at one time the prime minister of Israel, she said, we will never have peace in the Middle East until the Palestinians love their children more than they hate us. And that's, I read that. I don't know if I was in high school or college, but I read that statement from her. I said, that is so appropriate, so telling about the demonic forces that are at work in that region. Now, y'all want to talk about something funny? How about Joe Biden's what is it? His yeah, that's it. Peer to nowhere. When he announced that at the State of the Union address, nobody who had any sense at all said that is going to work. And sure enough, it hadn't been there 2 weeks. All the relief aid that got unloaded onto that pier got immediately stolen by Hamas, number one. Number two, the pier has been absolutely destroyed. 2 of our pier tender ships ran aground and had to be pulled off the beaches. It's been a disaster. It's just, oh my gosh. The economy that we've suffered through with Joe Biden, You know, and I've told y'all before, I've lived through the Jimmy Carter years, and it was bad enough, but nothing like it is now. Well, that's the economy. Well, guess what? Biden's peer is the latest Carter parallel, because Jimmy Carter, if y'all remember, which some of y'all weren't even born then, Iran had captured a whole bunch of embassy hostages, and they held them.
Look up Operation. I think is it Operation Eagle Claw?
I believe that's
yes,
it.
Operation Eagle Claw. It was April 24th, 1980 through April 25th.
And what had happened is Jimmy Carter kept trying to give them the benefit of the doubt that he could negotiate with them. Remember, we had already allowed the deposing of the Shah. The Shah was an ally to us, and we had allowed for the deposing of the Shah, and Jimmy Carter did. And then the militants took over the embassy, the U.S. embassy, and took all those hostages. Well, we're running up on almost a year of them being held hostage. And guess what was coming up? The 1980 election. And his opponent was Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan had already made it clear that when he was elected president, those hostages wouldn't still be in Iran. One way or the other, those hostages would not be in Iran. Well, Jimmy Carter, getting desperate to pull something off so that he can look. Now, Jimmy Carter's a good man. Y'all realize that, right? Jimmy Carter's a good man at heart. But he had some of the worst advisors ever, just like Joe Biden right now. And certainly I don't say Joe Biden's a good man, not based on everything I know about him. But he was coming up on an election, 1980 election, and his advisors were telling him, you cannot let Ronald Reagan be the solution to this hostage crisis. You have got to do something so that you can take the credit for getting the hostages out of Iran. Well, that's where they came up with this military operation, and it was so hastily put together, so poorly planned, it ended in a disaster. They were struggling to extricate themselves. They didn't get anywhere close to the American hostages. It was so embarrassing. Well, that's why, you know, when you read the commentary, that's what everybody says about Joe Biden's peer that he announced in the State of the Union address. That you know, here it is. It hasn't even lasted 2 weeks. He was told it's not going to last 2 weeks. To see where he said that he wanted it put was the worst place for it to be put. He was deciding all of this for nothing but news, video, visual effects, and you know, what do you call it? Photo opportunities, photo ops. That's all it was for. Yes, they were wrong. They were very wrong. And you know, first of all, it broke apart. Parts of it has sunk, and then the other parts washed up on the beach. The pier's non-existent as we're sitting here right now. And that's $300-something million right there. And you know, next time, why don't we just drop $350 million in the ocean? That'd be just as effective. So, JT?
Well, that might be a good point to hit our. I think you were muted. Sorry.
Nonsensical Ravings. Somebody changed that banner to 3 Lunatic minds.
Yeah, I realized when you were going to be on the show today, it wasn't just 2 Lunatic minds, it was going to be 3. So I adjusted that. That might be as good a spot as any to take a quick ad break. When we come back, maybe this time we'll move on to the real infrastructure tax in America. This one's from someone very close to our hearts here at Nobody's Business Podcast. This is an ad from our sponsor at Sonora Shelton Fine Art. We'll be back right after this ad break.
Sonora Shelton Fine Art is deeply grateful for the support and encouragement from Nobody's Business podcast. Your passion for showcasing the stories and accomplishments of others is truly inspirational. Visit my online gallery at sonorashelton.com. And thanks again to Nobody's Business Podcast for being a part of my artistic journey.
Well, thank you.
I'm very thankful for my benefactor.
Well, thanks for being a part of our artistic journey. Well, we've gone on for about an hour, but I think we could probably get a little bit of time to squeeze in to talk about some of the things that we've been researching and looking into for these, what we're seeing as pretty much a physical attack. These are real attacks on our infrastructure, our technology, infiltration through our border. People think that, you're just a racist and you hate the foundations that this country was based on if you want to close the border. And it's like, well, if you look at who's coming through the border, we're not just attacking anybody who's got a different skin color from us, but we have our reasons for being concerned as to why just having an open border is probably not the best idea for the national security of our country.
Well, the open border has been a disaster. No nation can survive having no borders. Look at the news. 30,000 Chinese nationals just since October captured at the southern border. You've had 59,000. I'd love to find that article. Well, let's see. Here it is. I found it. Okay. I'm sorry, not 59,000. 52,000 special interest aliens have been encountered crossing illegally just since October 1st. 90% of which were captured in the San Diego sector. Now, listen to where these people. Now, look at them. Look at your photos. That's a very representative photo. Military-aged men without any female companions or children. Okay. What's meant by special interest aliens? These are people coming from nations who are known to be hotbeds of terrorist organizations and organized crime. Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Lebanon, Mauritania, Morocco, Pakistan, Senegal, Sudan, Syria, Tajikistan, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Yemen. That does not include the 30,000 Chinese in the same period.
You think any logical person who looks at this and says, do you think that our enemies or anybody in the world who wants to understand the U.S. or get inside for U.S. secrets is not taking advantage of the open border policy?
Well, of course they are. And here's the thing. When you're talking about millions and millions just in the last 3 years that have come across the border, unvetted, go take a commercial flight somewhere. You got to have your driver's license. You got to be you can't be on the no-fly list. Got to go through screenings, that sort of thing. How about these illegals coming across the border? And it's not just the Mexican border. They've now the pressure is on from people crossing in isolated areas at the Canadian border. Yes, these same kinds of identifiable military-aged males are crossing the border from Canada, just not in the same numbers. But here's the thing. When you've got that many people that were allowed to come here, why would you not? If you were an enemy of the United States, why would you not take advantage of the exact same features that this administration has put in place so that you will not be checked? You don't have to produce any identification. You can just give them a name and say, I'm from Guadalajara. I'm from Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm from so-and-so Honduras. That's all you're required to do. You can give them a fake name. They're going to put you in a big parcel with a whole bunch of others just like you. They're going to send you off to the interior of the United States. And they're going to tell you in 10 years, hey, by the way, you got to come to a court in Chicago for your asylum hearing. 10 years. That's the court notices that illegals are getting right now. That's how far out it is that their asylum hearings are going to be held. And what's to be done with them in the meantime? All right. That's if you're truly an illegal who's just trying to just get in the country. But that very system is the same one that lets all these military-aged foreigners who aren't coming here for asylum, who aren't coming here for a better way of life, as they would try to tell you. Okay? When you can put this many, we're talking about just since October. Just since October, military-aged men from these type countries, including China, unaccompanied by children or wives or girlfriends. What other reason are they coming here? Here's my heartbreak. Why would our administration intentionally, knowingly allow that border to remain wide open when all this evidence is out there? Now, what's the effect? Well, how about this? Where's the one about, let's see, U.S. Navy bases are ejecting foreign nationals 2 to 3 times a week. 2 to 3 times a week, our military bases are being probed by people trying to get past the gates. Some of them trying to get in. The one I read was somebody was in a panel truck and they claimed they had a delivery to make. Okay. Well, the company they claimed to work for didn't exist. Nobody, wherever they got the panel truck from, they claimed it was stolen. Now, what was in the back of that truck? Did you hear?
Mm-mm.
Was that on the news? No.
Sure.
Well, somebody knows what was in the back of that truck, but we're not being told. Why? Because the Democratic media complex cannot let this kind of thing get out too soon. But here's what I'm afraid of. When I can't hear you.
Weren't they just trying to deliver teddy bears?
Yeah, they were trying to deliver teddy bears. That's what they were doing. All right. What about the Chechen national that got shot by a special forces officer in, I believe it was either North Carolina or South Carolina? Yeah. Special ops colonel is getting weirder. Why? Because the Chechen national, if y'all know anything about Chechnya and its civil war with Russia, and here's the thing. If the colonel had done something wrong, why isn't he arrested? But he's not. Okay, This guy
because there was somebody he killed that qualified as probably a terrorist or a spy or somebody who could have caused harm, who was a national security threat. And he really did the United States a favor.
Well, here's the thing: the article that you posted the headline for says that Chechen national had a Chechen compatriot right there with him. And the FBI, when he saw his partner get killed, he fled, and the FBI caught him. But guess what? The FBI let him go. Now, what were they doing? Well, the colonel says that he had seen these guys before, and they supposedly worked for some power company, but they were there well after hours, well after work hours, and they were photographing his family, his kids. They were specifically targeting his kids and his home. And that's what made him suspicious. So when he went to challenge the guy, something happened, and the colonel ended up shooting the guy. Okay, he's dead. The compatriot runs off. He's captured by the FBI, and then mysteriously he's let go. But this is what you can't have it both ways. If the guy was legit, then the colonel should have been arrested. What's the deal? But he's not, because everybody who's investigated this knows that Chechen guy was up to no good. Well, here's the thing: they were both illegals. That's the problem of what we've had for the last 3 years. And what I'm afraid of is if every time we turn around, Trump's numbers just keep getting better and better, and Biden's numbers keep going further and further in the tank, they've set up a situation where something big is going to happen. I hope, like I'll get out, I'm wrong, because I never take joy in saying I told you so. But that's the worry I've got. JT, put that photo back up there about the foreign nationals from the. No, not that one. The one before. The military age men that have been captured. Yeah, those. Folks, I mean, put uniforms on them. Put uniforms on them, and you wouldn't be a bit surprised to see those exact same faces, those exact same ages, those exact same physiques. That's how many have been infiltrated into this country. And we just keep going right on. We keep going to soccer practice. We keep going to church. I don't know what to say.
So, Keith, is that what you're saying? Special interest aliens? That's what you're saying? I mean, what is you kind of said, but say that again.
Well, the special interest aliens were aliens, illegal, number one, first and foremost, who had crossed the border, not the right way, but had crossed the border, and they were from countries that were known to be or suspected to be openly hostile to the United States, or involved in terrorist activities or criminal enterprise. And I gave you the list of those countries. And more, it's 52,000 from all those countries. Well, from China alone, Chinese nationals, 30,000 in the same time period, in the same sector, the San Diego sector. So how many in the Del Rio, Texas sector? What about the Tucson, Arizona sector? I mean, how many? Do you think that they've only concentrated on the San Diego sector? No, that's the way they operate. It's a broad scale thing where they probe the entire length of wherever they can find an open passage along the border, because they play the numbers game. Well, when they concentrate, when ICE concentrates on one area, then that means they're not going to have the manpower to patrol other areas. And so, yeah, they're going to lose some. Yeah, they're going to capture some. Yeah, they're going to find out about some. But how many come across undetected daily? And remember, I think when we had Jake Mahan on, we talked about the gotaways. The gotaways means they've been identified either on camera or visually, but they were not apprehended, and they got off into the interior of the United States, and they haven't been caught yet. Now that's a gotaway. A gotaway is somebody that they haven't even been able to speak to.
Lord, I didn't know what you were saying. Got away. I thought, what's a getaway?
Well, it's interesting enough. Texas is obviously at the headlines of all the, fighting to protect the border. A lot of Texas gets a lot of criticism for not keeping an open border. Texas is a huge state. We have one of the biggest borders across Mexico right now. And interestingly enough, though, Texas is not the only state that's assisted here. There are at least 14 states that have sent soldiers to the border since 2021. A couple of them, Iowa, Indiana, Nebraska. These are all states up north. What interest did they have? What are they seeing in their areas that they're like, this is a problem?
Well, Denver, Chicago, New York. I mean, they're all clamoring now because, the illegals are not concentrating in the southern border states. They're actually, as a matter of fact, you won't see it publicized often, but Biden actually flies them to the interior of the country. And
well, I was talking to y'all not too long ago when before Christmas, my wife was looking for work, and she's got a military background. She got a solicitation because of her military background to go join a security detail in San Antonio. And this security detail was being hired by the Texas government to bus immigrants up north to New York, to Chicago, some of these sanctuary cities.
Minneapolis.
And this was an operation where she was going to be gone 60 to 90 days at a time without leave. So she gets on a bus, rides up there, flies back, hops on another bus, rides up there, flies back for 90 days. They're doing that still to this day in multiple buses, multiple security details. That's how many people are getting across the border and coming into the country. You're going to get people with nefarious reasons for wanting to be here in that group.
Well, I can guarantee you get bit a lot quicker and a lot more at the edge of the ant bed than you do 6 feet that way.
Yeah.
I mean, they just hadn't felt it yet, but they will.
Well, that's just it. They are starting to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening. And residents of Chicago, have actually showed up at city council meetings and just all but blew the lid off the meeting rooms, because the cities are now, doing all they can to give free money and free housing and free medical care to illegals. And the citizens of the cities, Denver's one, Chicago, Minneapolis, New York, they're all now, they're actually having to deal with the fact that these illegals are here, and thousands of dollars a month on the credit cards, free housing, free health care. And what about U.S. citizens? What about the ones that are born here? And that's why I said, I mean, it's well known. The country cannot last with open borders, but for 3 years, that's what we've had. So
well, open borders is just one issue. We have reports of physical attacks on our infrastructure. There's one article here where Chinese hackers had infiltrated the federal government's firewall system, and were in the system for 5 years before they were detected. 5 years they sat there and collected data on us. I just put something on the screen, but there was some fuel holding tanks at Dorsey Junction Station. Someone hacked one of their systems that provides the technology that provides the flows and the cutoff valves, things like that, the water infrastructure, Russia and China targeting U.S. infrastructure and our water facilities. They can poison our water system by hacking technology. And there's a big push right now for cyber security, because we're not having to be attacked by boots on the ground. We're being attacked globally through technology.
Well, and that's that's why Biden's numbers are just, they can't go down the toilet fast enough, because people are finally figuring out that our administration is worried way more about, making everybody quit driving, internal combustion engine vehicles. They're more worried about, everybody, using the right pronouns and, wearing the right clothes, and boys that can't hack it in men's competitions need to be protected when they go start dominating women's sports. That's what people are so sick and tired of, is watching our government, who's supposed to be out there not picking winners or losers. It's supposed to be out there just simply making sure there's a level playing field. And that's not what they're seeing. And these things are happening. And it's like our government is worried about the wrong things that don't really mean a hill of beans to the vast majority of us. That's why one of the big headlines in the last 2 days is the fact that Trump's support among blacks is twice what it was just a year ago. Now, that's a big voting block that Democrats just cannot stomach the thought that a black person would vote for anybody but a Democrat. And in fact, some of Trump's most vocal supporters, when you see the news clips, just like the rally that Trump held in the Bronx. We're talking about Bronx, New York. Well, some of the ones that they interviewed, they were hoping would be an embarrassment to Trump, but no, they were some of Trump's loudest and most vocal supporters, and were very well telling the reporter why. Is because they know that our current administration does not care about them. They're more worried about special interest groups and leaving the vast majority of Americans high and dry. Go do a poll at the doors of an HEB or an A&P or any of your local Publix or whatever. Go do the polling of people coming out of those grocery stores and ask them how do they like the money they're spending it for groceries nowadays as compared to 3 years ago. Start getting that news put in. But that's what people are upset about, because they are not concentrating on things that matter. Just like this report about the open borders and the illegals. Well, how do you think some of these attacks are being perpetrated? It's by agents that are being infiltrated into this country to gain entry into computer programs and systems and things like that. And yes, one of the one I read about recently, they were literally attacking a water supply for, I can't remember where the city was, but I do think it was a Midwest city, like maybe Kansas City or somewhere close to Kansas City. And it was a clear attack on the public drinking water. And, everybody's thoughts are that's what they need to be worrying about. They need to be worrying about these military-age men crossing the borders in droves. And they need to be worrying about these cyber attacks. They need to be worrying about, the plans of our enemies, but they're not. And that's why Biden's numbers are just, he won't look up and say, I've been doing it wrong, I'm fixing to fix it. He's not going to do it. He goes around the country telling everybody how great and wonderful they are. And you're stupid. You're stupid not to know how great and wonderful I've been as a president. That's what they're telling everybody.
Question for the audience: does Flint, Michigan, have clean water yet? I haven't been able to find anything. I see mixed reports here.
There you go. Case in point.
Well,
guys, we've been going for a while, so.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's a good one to end on. A lot of hot topics floating around today that I think we covered a lot of the hot spots. What's some closing statements from our host and our producer for our audience tonight before we sign off?
Well, from the producer, I think I'd like to keep a camera on Keith more often, because it did help tone him down just a little bit for him to know that people were actually watching. And I could use that sometimes when I'm his only sounding board.
Keith, what you got?
I'm just going to remind everybody, get back in your Bibles, study, and go back and do an in-depth study of Genesis 3:15, and then study the history of the nation of Israel and the history of the church. And we're going to have to get closer to God. We're going to have to be more yielded to God. We're going to have to take it more serious that we have an enemy. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, as the Apostle Paul says. We wrestle with supernatural powers in dark places, and that are behind the thrones of many sovereign groups in nations around the world. And it is truly a battle between good and evil. And you need to know and decide, number one, you're going to take it serious, because like I said, Satan and his minions, ever since the time of Adam and Eve, he's taken it serious what God told him, and we need to too.
Well said. Well, as always, it was a pleasure. I think we hit the topics that we've been trained to avoid. And remember, everybody, to join us next Thursday live at 8 p.m. We go live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Unless we have a guest that can't make that, we'll do a special one-off for them. Got some exciting lineups coming up in the next couple of weeks. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Send it to your mom, your dad, your wife, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin twice removed, your barber. Just get the word out. We love talking.
Even send it to people you don't like.
Yeah, send it to people you don't like. We welcome the conflict. So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great night. Love y'all. Come back again, and we'll be seeing you next week.
All right. Good night, everybody.